Hello and welcome to my presentation. It's called Full Steam Ahead, Science, Technology, Engineering, the Arts and Maths in Early Childhood Education. And I'm going to be presenting to you on my book called Full Steam Ahead, which is a practical book for educators working in early childhood education who want to bring more STEAM into their early childhood practice. So just firstly to introduce myself. So my name is Paula Walshe and I am presenting to you from Ireland. And from County Carlow in Ireland, which you can see here, the little red triangular shaped county there that the arrow is pointing at. So currently I work as a lecturer in early childhood education at South East Technological University in County Carlow in Ireland. So the little red area there on the screen. I'm also a PhD candidate researching STEAM in early childhood education at Dundalk Institute of Technology, which is in another part of Ireland. And as I mentioned at the first slide there, I'm the author of a book called Full Steam Ahead, Science, Technology, Engineering, the Arts and Maths in Early Childhood Education. So what is this book about? Well, this book is a practical book about how to incorporate STEAM, which is science, technology, engineering, the arts and maths, into early childhood education practice. And I wrote this book for educators, managers, lecturers, parents, anybody who's interested in STEAM for children aged 0 to 6 years old. So, a real focus of mine and what was very important to me when I was writing this book and in all areas of my practice and research is being able to make those really important connections between theory, research, academia, and actual practice with children. So, educators working with children in early childhood settings. So, by doing so and focusing on that when I was writing this book, it's a really valuable resource for early childhood educators. And I really focused on trying to ensure that the research around STEAM, why STEAM is important and how to bring it into early childhood practice, can reach the early childhood classroom so that it can be for the benefit of all children. And also to contribute to educator professional development, confidence, and knowledge in relation to bringing STEAM into their pedagogical practice. So, when I was writing the book, I decided to break it down into two parts. So, part one addresses the why of STEAM. So, why is STEAM actually important? And what exactly is STEAM? So, I explore in the start of that book, in the start of the book in part one, the evolution of STEM to STEAM. So, most people have heard of STEM, and people are, I suppose, only now hearing about STEAM. And it's not that STEAM is something different, it's just the evolution of STEM. So as research in the area moved on over the last few decades, I suppose there was a realization that of the importance of the arts, and therefore the approach was sort of evolved into the STEAM approach from what was originally STEM. So I also explore why STEAM is important in early childhood education. Why do we need to be bringing it into early childhood practice for young children 0 to 6 years old? And part of that is because of the benefit of STEAM to help children to develop 21st century skills, which are really important for them to develop, both to be active participants now and right along the lifelong learning journey, along the continuum of education, right through their lives. So I also explore in part one the different theories of learning and educational theorists and how their theories actually underpin a rationale for the incorporation of STEAM in early childhood education. And I also look at significant developments in each of the various STEAM domains over history. And I link everything then to the education and education for sustainable development and sustainable development goals and how that is so important and how STEAM activities can help to bring a focus on education for sustainable development into early childhood education practice. In part two of the book, then, I really focus on the how of STEAM. So, how do we bring STEAM into our early childhood practice? Um, you know, I have a chapter for each of the individual STEAM domains. So, there's a chapter for science, a chapter for technology, a chapter for engineering, a chapter for the arts, and a chapter for maths. But nevertheless, even though each chapter focuses mainly on one of the STEAM domains, it also makes connections to how that particular domain is has transdisciplinary connections across the other STEAM domains. Because in order for something to be STEAM in order for an activity to be a STEAM activity, it has to have knowledge and skills from across two or more of the STEAM areas. So a science activity, would that maybe uses some kind of technology, is a transdisciplinary activity. It's drawing upon knowledge and skills from both science and technology, even though it might be mainly focused on science. So because it draws upon knowledge and skill from another one or at least one more of the STEAM areas, then it's a transdisciplinary STEAM activity. So in the book, I make the connections across all the various STEAM areas and STEAM domains, and that's really central to everything to highlight that transdisciplinary approach. In part two, I also have lots of hands-on activity ideas using affordable materials and accessible resources. So nothing too expensive, to ensure that it's fully inclusive. And I place a lot of focus on supporting early childhood educators to be able to develop STEAM activities and bring STEAM activities into their practice using resources and materials that are probably already surrounding them in a typical early childhood education environment. I also focus on activities with using loose parts and open-ended materials for STEAM activities. STEAM activities using recyclable materials and junk art materials, and tinkering, the tinkering approach. And also, I place a big focus on unplugged technology. So, focusing on technology as meaning more than just digital screen-based devices, but looking at digital devices without screens, and also completely unplugged technologies such as tools, for example. And then I also place a lot of emphasis in chapter two on the vocabulary of STEAM and how we can bring STEAM words, STEAM language, and STEAM vocabulary into our interactions with children every day as a wonderful way to support STEAM activities. So also at the end of every chapter in part two of my book, I also end with a focus on um, the words of STEAM, STEAM language in relation to that particular domain. So I include at the end of each chapter information on words and language that we can use with children to support their understanding of that individual STEAM domain. So this screenshot is taken from the end of the chapter focusing on engineering. And I describe how this includes some examples of engineering language and technology, which can be introduced, or sorry, some examples of engineering language and terminology, which can be introduced to children in early childhood education through our interactions and conversations with them. So by bringing in those engineering focused STEAM words such as problem, solution, idea, construct, version, imagine, prototype, build, test, improve, task, plan, by bringing in those engineering focused STEAM words into our interactions with children. So, for example, if they're building a tower with blocks, we can talk to them about their ideas. We can ask them what their design is for the tower or what are they building. If it falls over, how can they improve it? Should they try again? What can they change? What can they plan? Um, so bringing in those engineering focused words is a great way to bring more STEAM language and more of a focus on STEAM and more of an awareness of STEAM to children in early childhood education. So I have a section on STEAM language at the end of every chapter on the book. So just to show you some activity ideas from the book. So this activity idea is taken from the engineering chapter, and the activity is to build a bug hotel. So I describe how we might design and create a bug hotel, how that can support children to learn about the environment, topics such as pollination, sustainability, caring for the world around them. I then describe the various materials needed to build the bug hotel, like reclaimed wood, reclaimed pallets, various dry materials, maybe pine cones, leaves, stones, tiles, bamboo. and how they can just fill the book hotel frame with the various materials and place it outside approximately 1 metre off the ground and wait for the bugs to come and visit. And then on the right hand side there in the yellow, I show the transdisciplinary links to this mainly engineering focused activity, but how it links to the other STEAM areas. So, for example, it links to the area of science by exploring pollination or in the insect life cycle, caring for the environment and sustainability. We can bring in technology by using magnifying glasses or binoculars or even the tools that we use to build the bug hotel. There's engineering here in terms of the design and the engineering design process and building the hotel. The arts are present because we're being creative, using our imagination and designing the book hotel. And then we have the maths domain there because we're counting, classifying, thinking about size and so forth. So that's highlighting how this mainly engineering focused activity has transdisciplinary connections across the other STEAM areas. So that's just one example from the many examples of STEAM focused activities that are contained within the book that educators can draw upon to bring into their practice. Another activity idea I have in the book here is in the technology chapter, and it's an activity looking at digital weighing scales. So it's mainly a technology activity, but it's technology in the form of either it could be a manual older type of scales like the one in the picture on the left, or it could be a digital scales with a digital screen and the numbers represented digitally on the screen there for the to show the weight. So that is digital technology, but again, it's not screen time, it's not devices. So I talk about how bringing in the digital weighing scales to help children measure and weigh various objects, and contrasting and comparing, the unplugged version of the scales to the digital version of the scales, which can help children to learn about concepts like analog and digital, also helping them to develop their computational thinking skills. So although this is a mainly technology focused activity because we're bringing in technologies, it's also focusing on engineering like quantifying and planning materials, and also maths, number and pattern recognition or weight and mass. So, as that was a technology I was talking about with the weighing scales, I just want to address the fear of technology because there can be a fear of technology among early childhood educators, worrying about the impacts of screen time or the cost of bringing iPads into their setting. But in the book, I really focus on bringing in technology that's not digital screens. So, how can we bring in technology without having to worry about the fear of screen time? And I have a quote here from Sharapan 2012, who describes how technology is more than digital. And this quote says that technology is just a fancy word for tools. As adults, we tend to think of technology as digital equipment. Um, but crayons and pencils are tools, so are rulers, magnifying glasses, scissors, zippers, and even dump trucks. So it's really important that we remember that and that we don't let our fear of technology be a barrier to bringing technology that doesn't need to be digital screens into our early childhood practice. So really remembering that it's not just digital screens. Technology goes beyond the digital. And even digital technology can be screen-based or non-screen based. Technology can be digital or non-digital tools. So for an example here, I have the digital and unplugged digital version of the same kind of tool. So we can have the unplugged version with the magnifying glass on the right hand side, and then we can have the more digital version of on the left hand side, but we don't have to be using digital screen based tools. Then we have the digital clock on the left hand side, and then we're looking at time represented in an analog unplugged way using the clock on the right hand side, but yet they're both tools. One is digital, one is unplugged, and we don't have the concern of screen time, but we're still bringing in technology. Or again, we have the analog scale and the digital scale, both technologies, both advancements and innovations. Technology didn't just, the word technology has become synonymous with digital screens and the internet, but the word technology existed in our vocabulary long before that, long before the internet was invented. And really, even going back, if we think to Stone Age times, an axe chopping tool is a technology. So a technology, we need to remember, is just an innovation, something that humans have created, a tool we've created to make another task easier. So it doesn't have to be restricted to digital screens. So we can bring technology into our early childhood practice without screen time. So for example, I have a picture here at the top. The child is playing with an old unused computer keyboard. So representing technology, representing early numeracy, early literacy. It's also a digital tool. They're learning about cause and effect, pressing the buttons. And we also have then the analog phone at the bottom. It does have a small digital screen, but it has the numbers represented with all the different buttons. And then it has the receiver that children have to pick up and put down. So very different to smartphones. So we're representing the real world by bringing in these technologies. We're representing innovation and problem solving. Children are learning about communication, about fine motor skills, early literacy and numeracy. But these are affordable and accessible ways to bring in technology into our early childhood practice. So, representing the real world is also very important. So, when we think about how children experience money being spent, for example, if they go to the shop with their parents, they're witnessing money being spent with contactless cards. They're not witnessing coins and notes as much as they used to. So, it's important that we remember that in our early childhood practice. So, for example, if we have a shop area, in our early childhood setting where children can engage in socio-dramatic play with the toy shop resources, such as a cash register, for example, we may have notes and coins in there, which is great in the form of cash. But is that actually the way children are witnessing money being spent in the real world? Well, for the most part, they're witnessing money being spent in a contactless way. So perhaps we should invest, and they're not that expensive. This is a toy-based version of a cashless or a touch. Apologies, a contactless card machine that children can play with in the shop area, and we're representing money being spent in the real world. If we don't have the resources to purchase one of those, we'll just print off the contactless icon and laminate it and put it on the side of the toy cash register that we do have in our shop area, and maybe bring in some old credit card style gift cards that we've already used. And children can pretend that they are contactless cards. And this can support children's understanding of money as an abstract concept that we can't see. Which is the way we experience money more and more in the real world. So we can still have our cash in the cash register, but also supplement understanding the concept of money in the 21st century as an abstract, non-tangible concept by representing these contactless cards and contactless card machines in our shop area. We can also explore more advanced, complex technological concepts such as robotics or AI, for example, without having to bring in expensive robotic kits or without having to bring in AI robots and AI tools. So, for example, we have some junk art materials on the screen here, boxes, toilet roll inserts, kitchen roll, hand towel inserts, silver foil or tin foil, and some buttons and some craft glue. So by bringing in these resources, we can discuss robots with children. We can ask them to design what they think a robot would look like. Using these open-ended resources, then they can create junk art robots and bring their creations, their designs, their imagination, and thinking about what robots look like. They can bring them to life by creating junk art robots. And then we can supplement their understanding of these concepts of robotics and AI by bringing in STEAM focused words into our interactions with children during this activity. So we can bring in words like robotic, automatic, program, sensor, function, coding, words like that. So we don't need to invest in really expensive robotics kits to bring in the concept of robotics into our early childhood practice. So, other ways that we can bring in technological concepts through play-based learning without, again, having to worry about screen time is Play-Doh and a focus on coding and maths. So, if we provide children with all of the ingredients they need to make their own Play-Doh, the flour and the oil, and the food coloring, etc. If we provide that on a tabletop or a tough tray, and we print and laminate a visual recipe, so a picture of the flour, the bag of flour, and a picture of 2 cups, a picture of the bottle of oil, and a picture of the appropriate number of cups, and so forth. So we provide the visual recipe and the materials, and we let the children work away and let them try and follow the visual recipe card and make the Play-Doh themselves. And if it's too wet or if it's too dry, that's fine because that's actually all part of the STEAM learning process. And we can support them to think critically to solve those problems. Like, is it too wet? Is it sticking to your hands? What do you think we need to do to fix that? What can we add or what can we take away? So we're bringing in coding and computational thinking because if we're following a recipe, we're coding. So coding is just following a set of instructions to have a desired outcome. So it's computational thinking, it's pre-coding, it's early numeracy, thinking about the amount of ingredients and what we can add, what we can take away, and so forth. We can also then, sorry, my screen just skipped. I'm going to try and go back one. So we can also bring in education for sustainable development. So, for example, exploring wind power. And we can do that in a very easy way by introducing some of these. I have in the picture here some battery operated handheld fans. We can provide the children with various items that might float, like feathers or pom-poms or scraps of coloured paper. Um, or scraps of material, and we can ask the children to investigate and see how far they can blow the items with the various wind producing tools. So they can use the handheld fan, they can use just their mouth to blow, or they can have a straw and try and blow through the straw. And they can hypothesize, they can experiment. So, some lovely STEAM words there. And we can ask them to test out their ideas. What do you think is going to be the best tool to produce the best wind? Which tool do you think is going to help you to blow the materials the farthest? So they can hypothesize, they can test their theories, they can critically think, and they can come up with solutions. And then we can use other non-digital tools like rulers or measuring tapes to measure out the distance that each tool, that each different type of device for creating wind, measure out which one was the most effective and which blew the items the farthest. Or we can just ask children to count in steps and count and bring the mathematics into it and count how many steps that the item was blown along the floor, for example. So, not forgetting the babies and the under twos. So, wonderful ways that I also explore in the book, for example, how to bring STEAM in for babies. So, for example, mirrors as a technology, exploring 2D and 3D, exploring reflection, light. And when they look into the mirror, they're exploring the science around their body, where their body begins and ends, as they or other things in the background move in or out of the reflection. We can also use bubbles. So by blowing bubbles, we can explore wind, how the bubbles travel on the wind, gravity, the parts of the body. So if the bubbles land on their arm, we can name the parts of the body. Oh, the bubble landed on your arm, your leg, your nose. So that's bringing in the science of biology and their anatomy. Is the bubble blowing up really high? Is it coming down? You've got maths concepts there. Or another nice STEAM focused activity, more focused on the arts domain, would be to create edible paint. So using custard or natural yogurt and then mixing in some safe food colouring into the yogurt or into the custard to make different edible paint colours. And the children can explore the colour mixing being science. So that's, a cause and react, the scientific method. I add this colour and it changes colour, or I mix 2 colours together, green and yellow, and what do they make? And they're also being creative while also exploring the science behind colour mixing, for example. And they're also exploring the science of their senses, the touch, the smell, the feel, the taste. So another nice example, again, for a technology is to think about a light table. So light tables can be quite expensive, but by using, you can see here, a flat, long, transparent storage box in the picture with some battery operated fairy lights inside, and then some lovely transparent loose parts materials in various colours on the top, we can make a homemade light table. So by making sure the box is opaque, preferably so that the light disperses through it, some battery operated string lights or fairy lights, and exploring the light as it shines through the various opaque materials or clear materials in different colours, exploring dimension, imagination, how light affects materials, and so forth. So, a lovely STEAM activity that again uses a non screen technology and that doesn't have to be expensive. So, the benefits of STEAM for children in early childhood education is that it affords them and supports them to develop valuable 21st century skills, such as critical thinking, problem solving, collaboration, communication, design thinking, teamwork, and resilience. And also, digital competence is something that is very important. And I know in Europe, the European Union, the European Commission has added digital competence to their list of basic fundamental skills, along with numeracy and literacy and active citizenship. And the fourth one is digital competence. And they have said that digital competence is so important for children to start developing right from the early years in order for them to actively participate in the world around them, because there is such a focus on needing digital competence to engage in the 21st century world. But STEAM activities, and the beauty of STEAM activities is that we can support digital competence without digital screens. Because to be digitally competent, we need to be critical thinkers and problem solvers. We need to be able to understand what information that we're presented with online, for example, is real or is not real, or is AI generated or is not AI generated. And in order to do that, we don't need to necessarily only understand how to use the screen itself. We need critical thinking and problem solving skills to be able to understand and think critically and ask those important questions. Is this real or is this fake? Is this AI generated or is this real? So digital competence can be developed right from early childhood through STEAM-based activities, because of how much they afford the development of design thinking, communication, problem solving, and critical thinking. And these are all conducive to being digitally competent learners. So I would just like to end then with some references, reminding you of my book, Full Steam Ahead. It's available through www.barupress.ie or on Amazon. And there are my contact details, so feel free to reach out. Paula.Walshe, and it has an E at the end of Walsh there, at setu.ie, or you can reach out to me via Instagram or LinkedIn. Thank you for listening.